Greetings. Thank you for tuning in to our new Pan-African show on Arts TV. Our show is called Afreeqa, and I'm your host, Gazalor Sefu. Today we have a guest for you. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Thank you for coming.
Oh, you're most welcome, Gatsila. I am Mama Desta, Dr. Desta, Sister Desta, Mego, and I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and most of all, I'm one who believes in love.
Oh, hallelujah. We have a lover in the house. So today I'm going to start asking you about you. So who's Mama Desta, and how do you identify yourself?
Well, you know, you've got nurture and you've got nature in terms of who I am, right? And we've also got DNA. I've been talking a lot about DNA. I am the sum total of my ancestors.
Okay.
Those who I've met, those who I never met, those that left the shores of West Africa through the horrible transatlantic slave trade and ended up with my great-great-great-grandmothers in Jamaica, but certainly educated in the US. I've got my Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida. But I've been an activist since the age of 16, you know, maybe even a little earlier, not knowing it. From the time I left Jamaica and moved to America and just experienced shock in terms of racism and so much. This is the 1970s, you know. So I think those certainly helped shape me, and everything that I do as a jurist, as an activist, as a creative, as a consultant, which I do here and I've done here for the last 16 years, is based on a convergence of my journey, you know, from the birthplace, my incubator in Jamaica, all the way here to my spiritual home in Ethiopia and my ancestral home in Ghana.
Wow. What a journey.
Yeah. I guess I should also intersect, you know, sometimes these things do lapse, but I do serve as the Diaspora Africa Forum liaison to the African Union. Our headquarters is in Accra, Ghana, on the W.E.B. Du Bois Center, and our whole mission is to support the African Union regarding the recognition and reintegration of the 6th region, aka those in the diaspora, and secondly, to try to facilitate reintegration economically, socially, culturally within the 6th region, as well as even on the continent, because we're working heavily with those from the diaspora that have returned, like yourself and I, who've been out there studying whatever and come home. So that's part of what we do.
Brilliant.
Part of it.
I know. I mean, hopefully we'll get to the, not the bottom of it, but we'll try to cover at least some of your journey.
Some.
So where do you reside permanently? Where do you call home now?
Well, you know, I say from Kingston to Casanches. So Casanches is the center of my universe.
Right.
You know, and I do love the place. We curate shows in our art studio gallery. It's a space that creatives gather. It's a space where serious reasoning takes place regarding the future of Black folks, Ethiopians, human beings, you know, that kind of thing. So Casanches is the epicenter.
So that's the permanent one.
Yes. But
Do
no.
you? Yeah, I know, right? Do you? Because I know you go back and forth from Ghana.
Yes.
Do you actually reside there also, or this is your permanent place and you go back and forth?
This is it, but I am a citizen of Ghana.
I know.
You know, we have worked closely with the government, and I've worked in Ghana since late 1990s with Nana Rita Marley, with the Rita Marley Foundation. And so we've done a lot of work in Ghana.
Okay.
And so it was based on those contributions to the country that I, amongst 34 others, received our Ghana citizenship as the first batch, sort of this test batch, you know, for, again, the reintegration and the recognition of the African diaspora coming home. Obviously, COVID has toppled many schedules, so I have not been home, my ancestral home, in a couple of years, but I am a Ghana citizen, full-fledged and proud.
Full-fledged, yes.
I'm also a permanent resident of Ethiopia. Yes.
You're a lucky one.
Well, that's something we lobbied for. You know, the entire community, for decades, the Rastafari community that came here has always been advocating for legal status.
True.
And so several years ago, I was called into a meeting with some of the community, and asked by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help come up with at least a draft policy proposal, what this integration would look like. We sent it in and it was reviewed, and then I guess maybe about 2 years later, Parliament has actually passed that. So over 200 Rastafari and Pan-Africanists have received permanent residency who've lived here and contributed over 10 years.
That happened a couple of years ago, right?
It did,
Before
exactly,
COVID,
exactly. 2018 was when they first started, when the Parliament approved everything.
Congratulations.
Give thanks.
You did say you are a Pan-African.
Yes.
Okay, so living in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Now this is outside of the box.
Right.
Meaning?
Yeah.
Okay, so you being a Pan-African, living in Ethiopia, with the current times, the situation, the no more movement, with all this vibration that's going on, how do you feel living in Ethiopia currently?
It's a spectrum of feelings, and I think that's one of the things that would even help us, if I can start there externally, and then I'll go internally into how I feel. But externally, if we can understand that it's not one way, and it's okay to feel and have opinions from various perspectives. It's not always right or wrong. It's a feeling.
True.
Right? It's what you feel. It's different than facts. True. And so it's okay to feel that sense of anger, fear, disappointment, joy, hope. The myriad feelings are something that's happening right now externally, frankly speaking. And for proper reason, because Ethiopia is a peaceful country. This is what we know Ethiopia for. So hearts are breaking right now. In relation to internally and how I look at all of this as a Pan-Africanist who has been living here since 2005. I came as the managing director for the Bob Marley Foundation. You know, we did Africa Unite, and I was like, yes, it's time.
I'm staying here.
I went back to the States, packed up. I mean, literally just suitcases. I didn't put a container or anything together. It was just like, now is the time. And so that said, knowing that people looked at me crazy, you're giving up everything to come home, it's because I believe in this country. And it's because Pan-Africanism is the fruit of Ethiopianism. The seeds were planted here very, very early, okay, in terms of the role, in terms of the position, the light, the love, the embrace, the connectivity that only Ethiopia has and is acknowledged worldwide. Some begrudgingly acknowledge it, but nonetheless, it is to be acknowledged, because again, that's not my feeling, that's factual, right? We've got Dinknesh, we can back it up.
That's true.
We can back it up, you know?
That's the best part.
So essentially, the feelings right now and how it all converges where Pan-Africanism is concerned is it is the right time. And it's the right time to see this generation beginning to reconnect itself with a wider perspective, because that helps you understand even the narrow perspective, because identity being fluid and all-encompassing, right? It's our gender, it's our eye color, it's our language, it's the taste for food. It's all of these things that make us who we are, right? And so in a wider context, that's the story of Pan-Africanism, because it's Africa-wide. Right. So if we understand the relationship that we have with the continent and the sixth region and how important we are, it helps us even value more each and every ethnic group, as they call it, or tribe or tongue that lives here. So this is a crucial time for us to embrace Pan-Africanism. Funny enough, it may sound like, oh no, we have to, funny enough.
We have to be one. Now that you've mentioned, since you've been mentioning the Diaspora African Forum, you said
the sixth region.
The sixth region. So
and that
I want to know about that.
Right. So the sixth region was designated by the African Union heads of states, the Global African Diaspora Summit, 10 years ago, almost to date, May 10 years ago, in South Africa. And the idea of the sixth region, as we know, we've got the 5 regions of Africa here, East, West, North, South, and Central. So the sixth region was to represent also the other part of the continent, but not necessarily the geographical part. Okay. So it's supposed to be looked at as both an economic region, just like we have the 5 regions, REX, right? It's cultural, it's social, it's also a moral obligation, you know, to these of us in the 6th region. But where the discussion becomes a bit foggy, I would say, is distinguishing between the historic diaspora, like my ancestors that were taken away. We didn't go away by, you know, by choice, right? Where do you want to be dropped off? That kind of thing, okay? And so that said, now you juxtapose that to the contemporary African diaspora, which is brothers and sisters, you know, maybe your grandparents or your parents that within the last, 50 years have traveled abroad for study, employment, education, again, exile even. So that's the new one. So on the continent, most countries are paying more attention, and rightly so, to their respective diaspora. However, again, the notion of Pan-Africanism, to jump back to your question, if we expand it and look at the wider diaspora, then this notion of 6th region will really be a complete benefit to the entire continent.
Beautiful.
So that's where we are.
It's funny, my 4th question is something that you've actually answered in the beginning, but I want to elaborate on it a little bit more. The question is, do you think there's an organic connection between Pan-Africanism and Ethiopianism? And you had actually said that there is a connection.
Absolutely. And beyond connection, or part of the connection, what we need is continuity. Because many times, as I said, Ethiopia or Ethiopianism is the seed, if you will. And especially if we contextualize Ethiopia beyond what we see on a map now, just that little piece that, right? We're talking about Ethiopia in its wider scope, the continent. But certainly, historically, from what has happened in Ethiopia, defending sovereignty, never being colonized, all of that, that's the aspiration of Pan-Africanist, self-governance, self-reliance, self-determination, Kujichagulia, all these concepts. So now more than ever, it's important for Ethiopia to look at that power, be it soft power, even if it's not just political power, but I'm talking about the people now, the power of the people that is within. When you recognize what your history is and what your role is and what it has been to billions of people around the world that look to Ethiopia. So it gives us a greater sense of responsibility to get ourselves together and take responsibility, because that's what it is. No one is going to come and save us.
No.
The Most High will give us mercy, grace, that protection to the best of, the circumstances, you understand? But it's time for us to shake up, wake up, and not necessarily in a response to say, well, what we're against, but what are we for? And this is what Ethiopianism and Pan-Africanism is. What are we for? We are for this bright future of our children. We're for this notion that, especially with the dam being in place and these sorts of things, that Ethiopia will once again lead, and if nothing else, on a moral high ground. Because morality trumps legality. Laws change every day, right? Yeah. Slavery was legal once. So it's really about embracing morality and humanity to bring us forward to that sense of, again, responsibility for each other. And in an unconditional way. It's important to say that. And what I mean by unconditional doesn't mean that we're accepting things that go against our green or our moral standards. That's our right to believe in what we believe in, right? But in terms of giving you the space to be who you are, to giving you the space to be in that different zone, whether it's linguistic, cultural, or otherwise, that's what love means. And this is the root, again, of Ethiopianism and Pan-Africanism, that love and protection. That's why Ethiopia wasn't colonized. We loved our language. We loved our food. We loved everything about us. So it wasn't necessarily this individual fight just to protect. What were we protecting? It was our precious identity, our precious culture, our precious heritage, precious traditions. Pan-Africanism and Ethiopianism, they go hand in hand.
Yes. How could Africa redesign the tools of Pan-Africanism to strengthen the continental capacity to prosper?
It's so interesting that you use the term tools because, and I'm sure this is why I've done it too, but Emperor Haile Selassie I at the OAU close of the first meeting in 1963 asked his brothers, or the heads of states, now that we have finished the job, what shall we do with the tools? End quote. You know? And so I've asked this question on various platforms, and responses were, you know, retool, refine, redesign, you know, so exactly. So again, the point is, let's not throw out and start again. So many times we want to tear down and start new, tear down and start new. When there are things that we can build on. Yes, there are things that we leave behind. Don't necessarily tear them down, preserve them somewhere, but build on it. So in terms of the tools of Pan-Africanism, we have to get back to understanding it as not just an ideology, not just rhetoric, but true essence, economic aspect, social aspect, cultural aspect, political aspect, spiritual, in every way. If we look at it in the 21st century perspective, what are the needs? You know, what are the priorities? How do we do this and synchronize even the 6 regions within the context of Pan-Africanism? But it is about being practical. So for instance, when we talk about practical Pan-Africanism, buy black. Buy African, you know, that's what we used to say back in the day. I'm an old school 60-year-old activist, you know, out of Harlem, and you know, you say you buy black, you know, but it is about supporting the African economy. You know, here in Ethiopia, I'll tell you, 99% of what I purchase in my household is produced right here in Ethiopia. I make sure when I go on the shelves that I'm reading labels. You know, so again, that's practical Pan-Africanism where economics is concerned, where politics is concerned, looking at who our leaders are, especially the community leaders as well as local leaders in politics, because that's where a lot is missed. You know, you'll have a head of state or a senator or, you know, parliamentarian, whatever, that says this is what we're going to go and this is what the policy is, and you believe them, but then what happens? You don't see it on the ground. So this is about our responsibility, though. We're the ones that have to shape it, curate it, and then implement it. It cannot be just talk. And the artists have a role in this. This is very important. The creatives have a very powerful role because their soft power, their ability to put out one song or one image, one visual, that becomes the rallying cry, you know? And gathers people around notions of unity, solidarity, and so forth, are really, really powerful. And no politician can do that.
Exactly. That's very true. Arts and culture have a big place in that.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us briefly about the idea? I don't know if you know about it. This is just, you know, there's a Pan-African parliament.
Yes.
And me and my husband have actually discussed, do you see an Ethiopian? You know, how do they pick them? Are they picked from every country?
Yes.
But we didn't see an Ethiopian, so we were very curious about the whole thing.
Sure. Well, that's how it's set up. It's set up that each country is supposed to actually assign.
Oh, okay.
Right. They choose their, I don't know, select, elect, appoint, you know, but it's based on each country. Essentially, the Pan-African Parliament is supposed to be the legislative body, if you will, of the African Union. Right now, it's more operating in an advisory capacity. It's not taking decisions on policies per se. So, you know, the African Union will celebrate 20 years in July since being formed. And there are many such entities of the AU that are not fully doing the work that is necessary right now for various reasons, you know. ECOWAS is one, which is the entity in the African Union that is supposed to be engaging the civil society, and even the diaspora. NEPAD is another. And most recently, my dear sister Nardos Bekele Thomas was appointed the first female CEO of NEPAD. And knowing her, we're going to see some transformation. Beautiful. And Ethiopian being put in that position, very powerful, you know. So, long story short, the Parliament, Pan-African Parliament is not where it needs to be yet. But again, this is where citizenry, before, remember I was talking about, you know, local government and getting involved, because that's where the pressure, you know, points can begin. And it doesn't have to be in an adversarial manner. It's advocacy though. So you're in there working with public sector, you know, and this is where we need our young political science graduates, law graduates and so forth to really be in there, not necessarily to perpetuate systems that don't work, that are outdated, that antiquated, that don't address our needs, but to go in with, and it's not easy. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that we've been doing at the African Union, we get the looks when we get in there. It's like, here they come, the diaspora. I mean, everybody's polite and they're gracious, but we're pushing and pushing and pushing constantly because there's no other way that we know.
How do we get our youth in the Pan-African movement, especially in Ethiopia? You know, even though since this whole thing has started, the No More movement, we've seen a lot of it, we've seen a lot of movement.
Sure.
But like you said, it needs to continue.
Yes.
But how do we get the youth that much involved? Or should they be even more involved by having conversations with different entities, different people? It could be on the, you know, on the small level or even on the high level. Sure. But how do we get them involved?
This generation, and you know, I'm the mother of 10 children, right? I had children in the 70s, 80s, 90s, right? So I've been able to see the difference decade to decade. What worked for my generation, your generation, and even my children, to some degree, my older children, is not going to work for these millennials, if you will. We have to, first of all, embrace the fact that social media is an important part of messaging. And we know that it's been a major vice where Ethiopia has been concerned, and African and Black imagery for the most part, how social media has been used. That should not stop us or deter us from pushing images and pushing Pan-Africanism, both symbolically and substantively, you know, through social media. But also it's very important in terms of the education process. It's not too early to start. You know, I remember in the States when my children were very young and recycling was, you know, becoming a big thing. This may have been like in the 90s, you know, and the children would come home, no, Mommy, you can't put plastic in this one, and you have to, they were first and second grade. Let's start inculcating this notion of Pan-Africanism, of Ethiopia, of the wider continent of Africa very, very early. If we start doing that, you know, first grade, second grade, third grade, with our children very, very early, whether it's teaching them the African Union anthem or, you know, whatever it may be. Let's start small, and you'll be surprised in a decade what you'll see. In terms of those who are adults now, young adults, you know, between, let's say, the ages of 16 and 25 or 18 and 30, this kind of thing, we have to be able to present something practical. We need to be able to show them how Pan-Africanism can work. Beyond making you feel strong and making you feel united and it's a rallying call, what is the practicality of it? How do we use these campaigns so a young person does not give more value to a label brand, right? Because that's what young people want. They want to be in the, you know, whatever, whether it's Gucci, Adidas, whatever it may be. Let's face it, this is what the generation is looking at. So educating on buying Ethiopian brand, you know, I mean, it's practical. It's practical, you know, and it begins with you. On the wider scale, though, there has to be more programming and more opportunity to engage youth because they're on the sidelines and being told, you're the future. How am I going to tell a 25-year-old you're the future? She needs to be in there right now. I can say you're the future to a 10-year-old, to a 13-year-old, yes. You know. So it's also very frankly waking up this generation and letting them know that they have a big responsibility, you know, and they have to take it seriously, just like we did. We struggled. We went through it. We, you know, it wasn't the norm. So if they really want this for Ethiopia, for their families, for their communities, they too have to start checking out the real situation and going within, because the answers are really all inside of us, you know. You look in the mirror, it's all right there.
Absolutely. Sometimes we don't dig deep enough.
Exactly. We don't want to come out of our comfort zone.
Yeah,
it's uncomfortable. And guess what? Change is not comfortable. And birth is not comfortable. When you give birth, it's the most painful thing, right?
Right.
And then what comes from that is life.
Is life.
You see? And so, you know, we're not saying that we want to inflict pain on anyone, but we have to know that the process is uncomfortable. It's going to challenge you and pull you into places that you've never gone before. And guess what? You don't have to accept everything. That's the other thing, you know, it's about the process. And at least making yourself open and this information available to you, that you can then make wise choices rather than living your life in a copy and paste mode.
Thank
or
you.
for likes or for follows.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Thank you. What are some of the sustainable ways we could utilize to preserve African identity and integrity in the coming century?
I always want to start with myself. And when I say myself, I mean the I and I. Mm-hmm. If each of us begin to really just start there, because so many times, right, we're pointing fingers, like it's because of you why I can't do this, or because of you why I can't do this, or because, you understand? And then we're not advancing because we're in this blame mode. In terms of how we advance, if we first start by looking within ourselves and asking ourselves how to better our lives. How? There are things that we can do that don't necessarily require a major job that's making 6 figures or whatever. Yes, that's nice. We're not rejecting that, but we're saying, where do we start in terms of transformation that will be sustainable? It starts in our homes, right? As women, how are we educating our boys and girls? What responsibilities have we placed on them? Is there any sense of accountability? Is there any sense within our families anymore of listening to the elders? Okay? Listening to the elders and what they did and how they did it and how we can learn from that. You know? So there are some very individual, personal things that the I and I, each and every one of us can and should be doing. Again, education-wise, you know, when my child comes home from school, am I spending enough time with him in books that are miseducating? Because let's face it, our books on the continent are still Eurocentric.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know any African textbooks where you can read about W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, even Malaku Bayen, who established the Ethiopian World Federation. But guess what? You as a parent, we as parents, as grandparents, can still ensure at home we have additional books that can teach us our history so that our children understand again this identity and integrity. Because what is integrity? When we speak about integrity, it is that sense of being, that morality, right? That sense of placement. And also that sense of responsibility, of trust. You are entrusted with what? Not just, if I put down my purse, you don't take up my bird. That's not what we're talking about. Can I trust you to make the right decisions to ensure that we don't sell the country out? Right. Can I ensure and trust you that you will make sure the children, when they're going to school, you know, are going in feeling strong and feeling proud? And government can't do that. No. Government can't do that. Again, what you place in your home. When we talk about sustainability, it's also about economics. How do we sustain ourselves in a country where people are sanctioning and threatening sanctions? It's a sign. But we saw that before when COVID happened and we were basically cut off. Exactly. Africa was cut off. It was like, deal with it on your own. Fine, good. We got this. The continent was least impacted than any other place in the universe. And why? We went back to tradition. So again, sustainability is also about being in touch with, again, the integrity of our health system, our traditional health system. These herbs that grow locally, these bush, as we call them in Jamaica, right? Bush tea, you know, that help to protect us. I mean, that's part of our integrity too.
Yes.
Not compromising our immune systems, again, our traditional systems, but ensuring that we have a holistic way in which we deal with our lives. Sustain it now. Sustain it. And don't let, and again, this is where the Pan-Africanism comes in, and in terms of making the right decisions, we won't now get knee-jerked when something comes along and we jump ship and we got to go somewhere else. You know, consistency, continuity, sustainability, all these things go together. And again, it must come in a holistic way. And it cannot rely on government alone. That is just absurd.
It's not fair too.
Exactly. We all have a role to play,
Yeah.
you know?
Even if it's just, like you said, in your house.
Yeah.
It starts from there.
Absolutely.
So.
And that's what we call low-hanging fruits. That's what you can do. At least you know within your house what's happening. And imagine if every house is doing that. Then when they come together, right, we have a stronger, more conscious society. But one of the other things, though, that we sometimes take for granted is really the humanity, that sensitivity that we need to have towards one another, you know, and that level of patience. And one of the things I have found in Ethiopia, and again, living here over 16 years now, is the level of patience. Ethiopians are extremely patient, you know, but does that mean we're tolerant, you know?
Yeah.
So we really have to embrace who we are. And not be ashamed or feel like if we're not doing everything and, you know, it's okay. Gas bakas, right? The egg will walk. That's who we are.
That's very true.
We've been around forever. We're going to be around for a minute.
Exactly. So chill, slow. Yeah, let's not rush into things.
Yeah, you know, take time.
Beautifully said. So, the Institute of Ethiopian Studies Museum has decided to open a permanent Pan-African wing as part of its expansion and have appointed you as the facilitator and co-curator of the project.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell us more about the Institute of the Ethiopian Studies Pan-African Museum?
Absolutely. Well, it's Pan-African wing of the Institute of Ethiopian Studies Museum, which is under the Addis Ababa University. And for those who may not know, it is the main palace, Lol Genet Palace, that was given by the Majesty for the university, right? 1950 something, can't remember in the Ethiopian calendar, you know. But
I'm going to tell you something. Actually,
Addis Ababa University.
When I was reading about this, 1963, when the OAU was formed, is when they actually formed.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the photo that was taken, you know, that classical photo with the African heads of states was taken right there on the steps.
Absolutely.
You know? And so part of the exhibition includes signatures of, you know, many of the heads of states that came. But that indeed, and that's why, you know, for years I've been curating stuff there, working with my colleagues, Dr. Hassan, who's no longer there, and Dr. Tekele Merritt, who is the new director, and Brother Masai, and so forth, and saying, this is really overdue. However, nothing happens before its time, you know? And so the physical space of the wing is located, most may know the Rasmussen Hall when you walk in, Grand Palace, but to the left, which used to be the administrative offices of Addis Ababa University, the president, etc., was housed there. But initially, it was the emperor's office where he would host and receive international diplomats and so forth.
Wow.
You know, and so it's 4 incredible rooms, high ceilings, fabulous palace.
Exactly.
You know, and so we start the journey from Ethiopia. what Ethiopia was, the continent of Africa as it was known, before, and then the transatlantic slave trade, the Berlin Conference, and then the victory of Adwa. And then we have another room devoted to the Organization of African Unity, African Union. And we did receive a grant from the U.S. mission to the African Union. So there's a section of Pan-African books also that have been provided by them for that space. And then we move on to another space that looks at the Haiti, for instance, revolution that happened before Adwa. And so W.E. Boudoir, again, Marcus Garvey, UNIA, we really go into that period that was, again, impacted by Adwa, by the victory of Adwa. And then there's a whole other room devoted just to the Rastafari movement. Again, one of the most prolific Pan-African movements in the 20th century, that came up in the 20th century, and it connects Ethiopia. So, I mean, amazing. We've got all sorts of, we've got clothing and rare documents and everything. And the final room is His Majesty's, the actual office space where he used to greet ones. And that also has some of his uniforms, gifts that were given from other African heads of states when they visited, in 63 and beyond. So it really is. And then we final with the heads of states of Ethiopia and the Nobel Prize and images of the No More movement.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is showing that Pan-Africanism has historical context, current context, and futuristic context, And so that's the full circle that we make. And we're going to be opening May 25th for African Liberation Day.
Yes.
And there's also a section there as you enter where we'll be doing a temporary contemporary art exhibition of African and diaspora artists that relate back again to the Pan-African movement, Pan-Africanism, Ethiopianism, and so forth. So I'm so excited. And playing in this space is just really incredible. And again, with my team and Prince Merita Fesso, who's been helping in my team, my co-curating team, and Kidist, everyone, it's just, we're really excited. And why it's important also, there is a space that will allow us, the Embassy of France has also gifted television and other things, smart TV, that will allow us to hold workshops and lectures and so forth. So it is a space that not only can you see history, but you can come and talk to and engage with Pan-African experts, leaders, personalities, artists, activists, when we start our programming as of May.
That's exciting. So, it opening on May 25th, there's got to be something going on.
Yes. Well, we're going to be working closely also with Ambassador Tesfaye, who is the Ethiopian permanent representative to the African Union. Because of course we started there in 63, and that's why we want to bring them back. And the African Union has also endorsed the project, so we're very, very happy about that. But we do want to have music and all sorts of things, so I'm sure we'll be pulling on your expertise to see what can happen.
I'm hoping we would go to Ghana this year, so definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Meaning get somebody from Ghana.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, you would love him. His name is Kwame Bedieko. And I got introduced to him while looking for music. He came up. And guess what the title was? OAU.
Powerful.
OAU.
Wow.
Yes.
There are actually a few people coming in from Ghana in May, because there's also going to be a roundtable discussion. As I mentioned before, it's a 10-year anniversary of the Global African Diaspora Summit, but it's also the 20th anniversary in July of the AU. So there's a delegation of about 50 from the African diaspora and from the continent that are going to be convening here. So we've got to get together and do something.
It is so exciting. Look at us. So now, we're going to go to the continental African free trade. So what are some of the challenges of the Agenda 2063 African Continental Free Trade Agreement? What are the ways we could further this worthwhile and necessary goal?
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's remarkable. This was indeed one of the ambitions of the OAU was the economic independence of the continent. Obviously, at the end of the era of colonization, if you will, it was much on paper. As we see West Africa, the banking system goes through the embassy of, goes through the country of France, right, and things like that. You know, you're buying and selling on the continent. You have to get foreign currency in order to get something from Kenya, etc. So what the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will be able to do is put a system in place that allows for the exchange of currency throughout the 55 countries. That's number one. Number two, again, the trading of goods, services, technology, all of this is now a possibility. The challenges come in how do we harmonize all of this? Because each border is different. Right. Whether you're going by road or by air, right? So you've got whether visas, tariffs, taxes, duties, customs, all these things, even what's called phytosanitary conditions, because if we're moving food or something from somewhere else, we want to make sure that, you know, it's not infected with any, you know, fungus, any this, and you understand, bacteria, whatever. So there's a lot that needs to be put in place, but the secretariat, which is established in Ghana, as a matter of fact, as well as other experts, are looking at all of these. The most important thing is at least we've got 54 to 55 countries who've now signed on, and we do have the largest trading bloc in the world. Now, some of the good things that are happening, the Pan-African payment system went live, I think, about 2 weeks ago. Okay. And that's a system that does allow for me to buy something with Burr in Kenya and it be converted. Beautiful. Don't ask me the particulars, the technology behind it, but there is a system. Exactly. There's a system. And now we'll also be moving more and more. We've talked about this for a long time, but moving more and more to that unified currency for the continent. Yeah. So what this really does is it allows a lot of potential for trade, for exchange of ideas, for the movement of the people. Exactly. And this is how the continent continues to grow and enhance one another. This is how our economies grow. So we're not, you know, any longer looking at bringing in palm oil, for instance, from Malaysia, when we've got it dripping in right, Nigeria, right. You know, that kind of thing, and our coffee being exported all over. So I think it's very important, but again, it's going to require discipline and that sense of Pan-Africanism, that sense of switching our minds to knowing that our goods and our quality services can be and should be just as what we want to get from Germany or UK or whatever. And that's up to us to raise these standards, to ensure that what we're sending throughout the continent is of the highest value. Yeah. The same way as you'd send it to the exactly. To the West, should be sent to Africa. Absolutely, absolutely. So there are a few challenges, but you know they're being addressed by people in various areas. Again, from the science part, regulation, customs, everything. And you know it's going to take a little time, but at least we've passed one hurdle. We're in agreement that this is what's happening. And like I said, want it. Yeah, and to see that payment system is really, really good. Brilliant. Well, Mama Desta, it was a pleasure having you with me today. Before I say my goodbyes, I would like to say thank you very much for taking the time out to come on our show and have this beautiful conversation with us. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. If there's Keep up your great work. Thank you. Well, you know, to me, it's you know, to answer one of the questions you asked before about young people, it's about having platforms like this. Yeah. This is really important, that within the privacy of their home, on their cell phone, whatever it is, that they can have access, because it is about opportunity and access to all forms of positive, uplifting information about us, for us, within us. Thank you. So I give thanks. Beautifully said. Thank you very much for watching. This is your new Pan-African show called Afreeqa with your host Sefu. We'll see you on Saturday at 4 p.m. Thank you.